I am 88 years old, and I am going to tell you about a woman who tried to save my life for 31 years, and I did not let her. Her name was Dorothy. She was my wife. She stood in our kitchen in 1971, when I was 35 years old, holding a piece of paper the doctor had given me at my last checkup. And she looked at me the way a person looks at someone who is standing at the edge of something dangerous and refusing to step back. My cholesterol was high. The doctor had written a number down and circled it. 264. He had told me to change what I was eating. He had told me to cut the butter, cut the red meat, cut the cheese I sliced thick every evening before dinner, like it was a ritual I had invented for myself. Dorothy had heard all of it in that office. She had sat next to me with her hands folded, and she had nodded at every word the doctor said. And on the way home, she had been quiet in a way that meant she was deciding something. That night she put that piece of paper on the kitchen table in front of me. She did not say anything dramatic. She just said, "This is real, Harold. This is not something you walk away from." I remember exactly what I said back to her. I said, "Dorothy, I feel fine. I have always felt fine. If something was wrong, I would know it. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that in ways that took me the next 40 years to fully understand, and by the time I understood it, I had already paid a price that no man should have to pay. I am telling you this today because someone is probably telling you the same thing Dorothy told me, and I need you to hear it in a way I never did. If you are still here with me, if something about these first few words has already touched something real inside you, I want to ask you something before I go any further. Subscribe to this channel. Not because of numbers or anything like that, but because somebody you care about needs to hear this before it is too late for them. And they might only find it because you were here first. Subscribe, and stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is the most honest thing I have said in 88 years. I grew up in a house where food was abundance. My mother cooked with butter the way painters use paint, generously, without hesitation, as if holding back would insult the meal. We ate red meat 4 nights a week. We ate pork on Fridays, thick slabs of it fried in lard. We ate white bread with every single meal, soft and pale, spread with butter that my mother bought in blocks and kept on the counter because she did not believe in keeping butter cold. Breakfast was eggs fried in the drippings left over from the night before's bacon. There was always whole milk, always cream in the coffee, always a block of yellow cheese in the refrigerator that got smaller by the end of every evening. That was not extraordinary in our house. That was just eating. That was just what you did if you were lucky enough to have food on the table. I carried those habits into my adult life, the way you carry your accent, without thinking about it, without choosing it, simply because it was what your mouth already knew. When Dorothy and I married in 1962, I was 26 years old, and I weighed 178 pounds, and I felt like I could lift a truck if someone asked me to. I worked construction for 16 years, then moved into site management, and even then, I was on my feet 12 hours a day. I sweated through shirts. I came home tired in a way that felt good, that felt like evidence of something. I thought the work was protecting me. I thought that burning calories meant I could put anything back in. Every morning for 22 years, from the time I was 30 until I was 52, I ate 2 fried eggs, 4 strips of bacon, and 2 pieces of white toast with butter. Every morning, not most mornings, every single one. I drank coffee with cream and 2 spoons of sugar. For lunch, I usually grabbed whatever was nearby the job site, which meant a beef sandwich or a pork roll or a fast food burger, eaten in the truck, standing outside, walking somewhere. Dinner was Dorothy's cooking, which she made with love and with all the same ingredients her mother had used and her mother's mother before that. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, made with butter and cream, green beans cooked in bacon fat, because that was the only way they tasted like anything, a glass of whole milk, and then the cheese, always the cheese, while we watched the evening news. I am telling you what I ate with this level of detail because I want you to understand that none of it felt wrong. None of it tasted like a mistake. It tasted like home. It tasted like comfort. It tasted like I had earned it. And that is the cruelest thing about cholesterol. It does not announce itself. It does not hurt. It does not make you dizzy, or weak, or breathless. Not at first. Not for a long time. It accumulates in silence. It lines the walls of your arteries the way sediment lines the bottom of a river. Slowly, patiently, without any drama at all. While you eat your dinner and feel fine and tell your wife she worries too much. Dorothy tried for 31 years. After that first piece of paper in 1971, the doctor visits became regular. Every 2 years, then every year, then every 6 months, as the numbers climbed and refused to come down. 264 became 271, became 288. By 1985, I was 59 years old and my LDL, the bad kind, the one that builds up and builds up, was at 192. The doctor sat across from me with a look on his face I had learned to read by then, controlled concern. The face of a man who has said the same thing many times and is watching someone not listen again. He said, "Harold, at this level, with your family history, we need to talk seriously about what you were eating," he said. "The butter needs to go. The red meat needs to go. The processed food needs to go." He gave me a pamphlet. I still remember the cover of that pamphlet. It had a drawing of a heart on it and the words, "Know your numbers." Dorothy read that pamphlet 3 times. I left it on the kitchen counter for 2 weeks and then put it in a drawer. I told myself I would read it later. I never did. She tried other ways. She started cooking with less butter. I noticed immediately, and I said something about it, something unkind. Something about how the food didn't taste right anymore. She tried switching me to chicken instead of beef a few nights a week, and I ate it without complaining, but I made sure she knew it wasn't the same. She bought skim milk once, and I poured it down the sink and went to the store myself and came back with whole. I was not a cruel man. I did not think of myself as stubborn. I thought of myself as someone who knew his own body, who had worked hard all his life, who had earned the right to eat what he wanted, who would know when something was actually wrong. If any of this sounds familiar, if you are reading your own habits into what I am describing, I want to stop here for a moment and ask you to give this video a like, not for me. Because someone else is out there right now with a drawer full of pamphlets they never read, and your like is what might put this in front of them. Press it, and keep listening. In 1989, I was 63 years old, and I had a transient ischemic attack. That is what the doctors called it, a mini-stroke, in plain language. I was sitting at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning, eating my usual breakfast, when I noticed that my left hand felt strange. Heavy, not quite mine, and then for approximately 8 minutes, I could not find the words I was looking for. I would open my mouth, and the word I needed would not be there. Dorothy was standing at the sink, and she turned around and saw my face, and she called the ambulance. I remember the sound of her voice, the particular pitch of it, the way it broke at the edges. At the hospital, after the tests, the neurologist told me that I had been lucky. He told me what had happened, that a small clot had temporarily blocked blood flow to part of my brain. He told me that my arteries showed significant narrowing. He told me that my cholesterol had been dangerously high for at minimum 15 years, and that the damage to my cardiovascular system was real and documented and serious. He said, "Mr. Dawson, if we do not change what is going in, we will be having a very different conversation next time, and there may not be a next time in this room." Dorothy sat in the chair beside my hospital bed that night, and she did not say, "I told you so." She never said that. She held my hand and looked at the wall, and after a long time she said, "I don't want to lose you over butter, Harold," I cried. I am not ashamed to say that. I cried in that hospital bed at 63 years old, because a woman who had been trying to protect me for 18 years was sitting there, not angry, just tired, just still fighting for a man who had never once fought for himself. That was the first time I actually heard it. Not the doctor, not the pamphlet, her, after 18 years. I want to be honest with you about what happened after that. I changed, but I changed the way men of my generation changed incompletely, begrudgingly, not enough. I cut some of the beef. I switched from whole milk to 2%, not skim. I let Dorothy use less butter in the cooking. I told myself that was enough, that I had responded, that I had made the adjustment. My numbers improved slightly. The doctor said I was doing better. I told myself I had fixed it. I had not fixed it. I had put a smaller leak in a dam that was already cracked through. Now let me tell you about 3 illusions I carried for most of my adult life, because I think at least one of them is something you are carrying right now. The first was the illusion that my body would tell me when something was really wrong. I believed, somewhere deep and unexamined, that serious illness would announce itself clearly, that I would feel it coming, that there would be unmistakable evidence before anything catastrophic occurred. I based this on the fact that I felt strong. I based it on 40 years of never missing work, never being hospitalized, never having anything break down in a dramatic or obvious way. What I did not understand, what nobody explained to me in a way I could actually absorb, was that cholesterol damage is cumulative and silent. The narrowing of my arteries had been happening since my 40s. My body was not fine. My body was holding together while the infrastructure was slowly failing. The way an old building looks solid from the street, while the pipes inside are rusted through. The second illusion was that the bad habit was harmless, because everyone around me had the same one. I ate butter, because my father ate butter, because his father ate butter. I ate red meat 4 nights a week, because every man I knew did. I poured cream in my coffee, because that was just coffee. When something is universal in your world, it stops looking like a choice and starts looking like a fact. I could not see my diet as dangerous because I had no frame of reference in which it was anything other than normal. What I thought was normal was slowly, chemically, physically narrowing the vessels that fed my heart and my brain year after year. While I sat at the table and felt fine and told Dorothy the food tasted better with butter. The third illusion was the most dangerous. I believed that the work I did physically, the years on construction sites, the long hours on my feet, was a kind of insurance policy. I thought my body was burning through the damage faster than it could accumulate. I thought the sweat and the labor were protecting me from the food. They were not. Exercise helps. It is real and it matters. But you cannot outwork what you put in your mouth. The cholesterol was going into my arteries regardless of how tired I was at the end of the day. The labor was not undoing what the butter was doing. I was spending and telling myself the account was full when it was being drained. There are people who love you who have been trying to tell you something. Subscribe to this channel. Share it, because the people who warned me had the right words, and I chose not to hear them. And that choice cost me more than I can put into a simple sentence. Don't let the person you love most sit in a hospital chair holding your hand when they have been trying to hold your attention for years. Subscribe. Pass this on. In 2003, I was 67 years old, and Dorothy was diagnosed with breast cancer. She fought it for 4 years. During those 4 years, I was her caregiver, and I cooked for her. And in cooking for her, I started learning for the first time in my life what food actually was. Not comfort, not habit, not reward, but information that the body processes and responds to, one meal at a time. A nutritionist came to the house to help us understand how to support Dorothy's treatment with what she ate. That woman, her name was Carol, sat at my kitchen table and explained things in plain language that no doctor had ever thought to use with me. She explained what saturated fat actually does inside the body. She explained what soluble fiber does. She explained why certain fats feed inflammation and why others reduce it. She showed me the difference between a food that the body struggles with and one that it can use. I was 67 years old before anyone explained to me what cholesterol actually was, in terms I could picture. I was 67 before I understood why the butter was a problem in the language of biology, rather than the language of numbers on a chart. Carol put it this way. She said, "Imagine your arteries are garden hoses, and every day you are choosing whether to run clean water through them or pour sand in with the water. The sand does not go away. It accumulates. Over 30 years of sand, the hose gets narrower, the pressure builds, and eventually the hose either fails or something upstream fails, trying to push water through." That image, the sand in the hose, was the first time I truly understood what I had been doing to myself for 4 decades. Dorothy died in 2007. She was 71 years old. I am not going to say much about that because some losses don't fit inside language, and I am 88 years old, and I still haven't found the words. What I will say is that she spent 36 years trying to protect a man who thought he knew better, and she died before she ever got to see him actually try. After Dorothy, I changed. Not because I wanted to live, not at first. I changed because I had nothing left to resist for. When you have spent your whole life defining yourself against someone else's concern, when that concern disappears, You are left standing in your own kitchen, not knowing how to justify anything. I was 71 years old, and I was alone, and I didn't know why I would bother with the butter anymore. I started with oats. Not because I had read anything, or because someone told me, because oats were easy, and I was tired, and they required almost nothing of me. A handful of rolled oats, water, and whatever was in the fruit bowl. I ate that for breakfast for the first time in 60 years of mornings. It felt like surrender, that first bowl. It tasted like nothing I had chosen. And then slowly, over weeks, it started tasting like morning. Like the beginning of something rather than the continuation of an old argument. Carol had explained that the beta-glucan in oats, a specific type of soluble fiber, binds to cholesterol in the digestive system and carries it out of the body before it can be absorbed into the blood. For every gram of soluble fiber, you can lower your LDL by approximately 1%. I did not know that when I ate my first bowl. I only found out later. When I started asking questions, I should have asked 30 years earlier. But the oats were the beginning, and the beginning was what mattered. The second swap was the fat I cooked with. Butter had been in my kitchen for 71 years. Replacing it with extra virgin olive oil felt absurd to me. At first it seemed like a European affectation, like something people in magazines did, not something a man from Pennsylvania did in his own kitchen. But I tried it. I used it on bread first, dipping instead of spreading. Then I used it to cook the eggs I was still eating. The flavor was different. Not worse, just different. And the research that Carol had shared with me, which I was finally reading, now that there was no one left to not listen to, was consistent and clear. Extra virgin olive oil, with its monounsaturated fats and its antioxidant compounds, reduces LDL cholesterol and does not reduce the good kind, the HDL, the way saturated fat does. It was not a theory. It was documented across dozens of clinical studies. I put the butter in the refrigerator, and eventually I stopped buying it. The third swap was red meat. I did not eliminate it entirely, and I am not going to tell you that you must. But I reduced it from 4 nights a week to 1. In its place, twice a week, I started eating salmon and sardines. Fatty fish, rich in omega-3 fatty acids. The kind that lower triglycerides and reduce inflammation and help the arteries work the way they were designed to work. I had never eaten sardines voluntarily in my life. The first time I ate them, I was standing at the kitchen counter at 71 years old. Feeling like a man who had finally agreed to something he should have agreed 2 decades ago. They tasted fine. They tasted like something my body was grateful for, though I could not have explained that at the time. What I know now is that the omega-3 south in those fish were doing work inside me that the beef and pork had never done. Reducing the inflammation that contributes to arterial plaque, protecting the heart, rhythmically as well as chemically. The fourth swap was the snacks. I had eaten crackers and processed things my whole life, the kind that come in packages, the kind made with partially hydrogenated oils and white flour and salt. I replaced them with a small handful of walnuts every afternoon. Walnuts specifically, not because someone told me walnuts were magic, but because Carol had explained that walnuts contain polyunsaturated fats that actively lower LDL, and that eating 2 ounces of mixed nuts per day has been shown in clinical studies to reduce LDL cholesterol by roughly 5%. 5% is not dramatic. 5% over 15 years of daily habits is real. I ate my walnuts every afternoon. I still do, at 88, every single day. Right around 3 o'clock, sitting at the table where Dorothy used to sit. The fifth swap was the dairy fat. I stopped using cream in my coffee. I stopped eating the thick slices of yellow cheese that had been part of my evenings for 40 years. In their place, I started eating avocado with regularity, half an avocado on toast, made from whole grain bread, or sliced into whatever I was having for lunch. Avocado contains monounsaturated fats and fiber compounds that improve HDL cholesterol levels and reduce the quality of LDL, meaning not just the quantity of bad cholesterol, but how harmful it is to the artery walls. The research on this is consistent and well documented. An avocado is not a miracle. But it is real food, doing real work, and I had spent 7 decades eating real food, doing real damage. So the swap felt both small and significant at the same time. At 73 years old, 2 years after I started making these 5 changes, My doctor showed me my blood panel results and told me my LDL had dropped by 41 points. Not because of medication, because of oats and olive oil and fish and walnuts and avocado. Because of 5 things I swapped on my plate after spending a lifetime not swapping them. He said it was meaningful. He said it was real. He said, "Keep doing what you are doing." Dorothy would have said, "I know. Now I sit here at 88. My legs are slower than they used to be. I walk with a cane some days, not all days, but some. My left hand still sometimes feels distant in ways that remind me of that Saturday morning in 1989, when the words disappeared. I have a cardiologist I see every 4 months, and a primary doctor I see every 3. I take 2 medications, both related to my heart, both things that would probably not have been necessary if I had listened in 1971, or in 1985, or even after the mini-stroke in 1989. I wake up every morning at 6:15, and I eat my oatmeal with blueberries. I cook with olive oil. I eat salmon on Tuesdays. I eat my walnuts at 3 o'clock. I eat my avocado. I have done this for 17 years, and it has kept me here, and functional, and largely independent at an age that none of my doctors predicted I would reach in any kind of useful shape. I am grateful. I am also furious at myself in a quiet, settled way that no longer needs to shout. Because I could have done this at 35. I could have done it at 48. I could have done it after the mini-stroke. I could have spent 30 years making these 5 simple swaps, and I might have arrived at old age with cleaner arteries and a body that had not been slowly choked down to the narrowest version of what it was supposed to be. I could have given Dorothy 30 years of the man she married, the man who was actually protecting himself instead of defending his right to destroy himself slowly. If I could go back to 35, if I could sit across from my younger self at that kitchen table in 1971, with that circled number on the piece of paper, I would say, "The butter is not worth it." I would say, "The red meat 4 times a week is not an identity, it is a habit. And habits can be changed without losing anything real." I would say, "The oats you think are boring are the most interesting thing you will ever eat, because what they are doing inside you is profound and patient and steady." I would say, "The olive oil will taste different, and then it will taste right, and then it will taste like the decision that kept you alive." I would say, 2 ounces of walnuts a day is not a sacrifice. Losing your words at the kitchen table at 63 is a sacrifice. Losing your wife because you spent 36 years not listening is a sacrifice. The walnut is not the sacrifice. I don't have much left to give. These words are what I have. If something I said today is going to stay with you, if you are going to change even one thing on your plate because of what I told you, give this video a like before you go. That is how I will know I reached you. That is how I will know Dorothy's 31 years of trying finally reached someone. I am tired now. My hand that types, this is the same hand that went strange at the kitchen table in 1989. I have made my peace with most things. I have not made my peace with the years I wasted, but I have made my peace with the fact that I cannot recover them, only use what is left differently. Somewhere, right now, someone is sitting across from a piece of paper with a circled number on it. Someone who loves them is reading the room carefully. Someone is about to say something that matters. I am asking you, with everything I have left, to be the person who actually listens. Change the butter. Change the meat. Start with the oats. Tomorrow morning. 1 bowl, 1 beginning. I'm tired now. Go. Don't wait the way I waited. Dorothy couldn't afford for me to wait. And neither can the people who love you.